Blue Origin's CEO finally admitted the upper stage laid an egg, and the commercial customer paid the ultimate price. BlueBird 7 separated and powered on normally in the vacuum, but New Glenn dropped the asset into an orbit too low to survive. That is the whole embarrassment right there. Watch this, because the press release crowd hates this timing. In that same news window, SpaceX stacked another number onto an operating machine and landed Falcon booster number 600. 600 Falcon booster landing sits right next to a lost commercial payload. Told you so on a national scale. The old slide rule guys knew the difference between a mature launch provider and a suborbital carnival ride. You do not get partial credit on the contract because the shiny booster came back to the concrete. The engineers who sweat over F-15EX Eagle 2 payload margins and hardpoint tolerances know what real hardware execution looks like, and they can spot process rot from a mile away. They warned everybody about this kind of MBA disease for decades. 14 years and still fighting to earn the basic orbital confidence that SpaceX already turned into routine hangar noise. Bezos dumped founder funding into the company, reportedly liquidating about $1 billion of stock per year to build a viable commercial competitor. The first stage booster recovery did the exact part they wanted on camera, but the payload story hit the wire hard. AST SpaceMobile needed BlueBird 7 for a direct-to-device cellular broadband network. That is real engineering and useful national infrastructure. It was part of a broader deployment push scheduled throughout 2026. Instead, the stranded spacecraft had to be deorbited and burned up in the atmosphere. The customer lost it because the ride could not ship. Here's the part nobody talks about. Blue Origin got the glossy photo op win and still got smoked where commercial payload customers care most. Payload delivery. The booster recovery makes the fanboys clap, but the delivered orbit writes the invoice. Hardware does not care about billionaire vibes or boardroom promises. Hardware cares about thrust and guidance margins when the mission clock is running. Now check this. BlueBird 7 was not some dummy mass or a vanity box. It was a serious commercial payload with an operational purpose. Dave Limp later confessed that one upper stage engine did not produce enough thrust to reach the target. There it is. Engine performance and test stand reality. Hangar talk beats the polished press release every time. The customer did not lose a satellite because it forgot how to be a satellite. The launch service did not deliver the bag. Across the field, SpaceX lives an operating spaceflight now. Starbase is beating raw steel into flight articles, and Boca Chica iterates fast. Raptor development keeps moving forward relentlessly. Mechazilla made the chopstick catch talk sound a lot less crazy. That is rapid reusability, leaving the conference room and walking onto the pad. Falcon 9 turned fixed-price reuse into an industrial habit long ago. 600 booster landings is not a corporate trophy. It is a factory signal. It physically proves the recovery crews and propulsion people have been beaten into shape by repetition. SpaceX has made booster recovery boring. Boring is king in aerospace. Boring means the payload goes where it belongs without corporate explanations about why the engines quit. Blue Origin is still trying to prove the basics under pressure. The company spent years selling patience as a brilliant strategy. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and all that consultant boardroom music. But money is not flight heritage. Money is not cadence. SpaceX took its equivalent investment path and built a ruthless operating machine. SpaceX turned money into landings. Blue Origin spent Bezos money and got smoked in public. This is where it gets good. The contrast hit hard because of the split screen. On one side, Blue Origin was forced to explain a major upper stage engine issue. On the other side, SpaceX added another successful landing. The gap widened on the same weekend. That is how status shifts happen in this industry. One company explains and the other company executes. One company loses a paying customer satellite to re-entry. The other turns a Starlink mission into another boring reusable milestone. You already know how this ends if the pattern holds. Payload buyers start doing the quiet math. Insurance people do the quiet math. Launch is trust. Real talk, this is where Bezos gets humiliated. Booster recovery gave them the banner, but payload delivery took it all away. A wrong orbit openly says the rocket went up and missed the customer's core need. The engineers warned every generation about this kind of culture. Do not confuse milestone theater with mission assurance. Do not let the bean counters sell close enough as performance. In orbital launch, close enough means a dead spacecraft. The part the press release leaves out is that BlueBird 7 separated cleanly and powered on normally. That specific detail matters. It takes the easy excuse off the table. You cannot hide behind space being hard when the delivered orbit was the only problem. That is why test stand reality matters. One upper stage engine coming up short becomes the whole story. SpaceX learned that lesson in public years ago. Blow up and learn. Fly, fix, fly. Starship is doing the same brutal school with full-flow staged combustion. The crucial difference is the loop. Failure feeds the next vehicle. Blue Origin has money, but 14 years and still, that is the permanent scar. The company has to stop sounding like the future and start behaving like a launch provider. If Falcon puts the payload where it belongs and lands, Falcon wins. If New Glenn lands the booster and loses the payload, New Glenn loses. Everything else is consultant fog. The Apollo gen would ask one question: did the spacecraft reach the needed orbit? Answer: no. Then the review starts immediately. Not the brand, but the raw data. And for AST Space Mobile, the flight data was ugly. The satellite became a useless disposal case. That is a customer asset turned into a fireball. Meanwhile, SpaceX number 600 sits there and annoys everybody. The booster still landed cleanly. The industry still has to answer the visible scoreboard. The scoreboard is replacing the brochure. SpaceX dominance is documented by repeated flight and recovery. Blue Origin cannot lawyer its way into that kind of trust. Boeing could not PowerPoint its way back to old Boeing. The Senate Launch System crowd cannot pork barrel its way into weekly cadence. Eventually the metal talks. The metal said New Glenn's upper stage failed BlueBird 7. SpaceX successfully landed another booster in the same news window. That is why conservative aerospace guys are forwarding this one. They hate excuses. They hate watching real engineering get buried under executive polish. They hate seeing useful satellites die for partial wins. They hate the MBA disease treating failure as a messaging challenge. The engineers were right. The mission is the payload. Stay with me. New Glenn's third launch was supposed to prove Blue Origin was a real heavy lift provider, not a tourist elevator or a billionaire vanity tower. Then the upper stage missed the planned orbit. That is terrible mission execution. That is test stand reality slamming the boardroom door. The public spin wanted the booster recovery to carry the day. Every blueprint guy knows recovering hardware matters, but the customer bought an orbit. Launch is not a fireworks show. The product is delivery. The old Boeing guys care about output. They care about whether the payload reaches the right orbit. They care about whether the engine team has authority. The blueprint guys can smell PowerPoint engineering. They watched old aerospace turn into process theater. SpaceX built a loop of launch, land, inspect, and reuse. Falcon 9 made reuse normal. Falcon landings became routine, and routine is dominance. Once one company proves reuse at scale, old excuses sound tired. 14 years and still the comparison got worse. Reaching early orbital work long after SpaceX stacked hundreds of landings is not a parade. It is showing up after everybody retired twice. When a major failure lands in April 2026, the slow brand takes a hit. If you sell patience, deliver precision. SpaceX had a much higher launch cadence and became the dominant provider. Falcon became the default ride. Customers buy dates, mass, orbit, and reliability. A launch provider that flies often learns often. This was Bezos' shot to prove a founder-funded company could beat SpaceX. Instead, the visible scoreboard gave a brutal line. Bezos funded Blue Origin like a dynasty and got a late orbital rocket. The engineers were right. The people who said cadence would beat ceremony were right. Vertical integration outran committee aerospace. Even real milestones get swallowed by the comparison. SpaceX has orbital reuse and 600 landings. SpaceX has public failures turned into visible progress. BlueBird 7 becomes the scar customers remember. Blue Origin said one BE-3U engine underperformed during a key burn. The trouble sits squarely in the upper stage job. Real engineering lives right there, not in the live stream applause or the reusable booster victory lap. According to the Times of India, the FAA opened a formal mishap investigation. The vehicle got grounded while Blue Origin has to explain what broke. That is the adult table. No more step-by-step fluff. The federal regulator is in the loop. The customer is burned, and the market is watching closely. Rockets punish arrogance. Every Apollo Gen veteran knew that. The humiliation is the split screen. Blue Origin celebrates the booster while the payload misses the mission. That is MBA disease in rocket form. Sell the image, polish the milestone, and pray nobody asks about the customer. The machine shop floor always knows before the launch graphic does. Customers care about schedule, orbit, and service life. BlueBird 7 was a commercial payload with operational purpose. The question became whether New Glenn can deliver. A booster landing makes a company look modern. A wrong orbit makes a company look unfinished. SpaceX built its reputation by turning flights into routine delivery. Falcon built trust by shipping payloads and bringing boosters back. New Glenn just showed it can recover hardware while failing the core ask. Blue Origin has to close the loop between vehicle performance and customer deliverables. That is disciplined failure analysis. The old McDonnell-Douglas merger survivors understood that pain. You do not talk your way around an underperforming engine. Your taxpayer dollars may not explicitly fund this specific commercial payload, but your money floats the broader contractor ecosystem. Fake astronauts float on joyrides, while real astronauts historically rode systems proven by ruthless execution. Suborbital tourism means nothing when your upper stage chokes during a GS2 burn. TechCrunch and Gizmodo both ran the exact same brutal reality check. A commercial network asset became space junk. The slide rule guys warned management that a sleek presentation deck cannot fake a vacuum restart. Boeing learned this exact same lesson when the McDonnell-Douglas merger swapped out engineers for finance executives. Blue Origin is staring down the same barrel. Ars Technica laid it out cleanly. The errant upper stage spoiled the success of reusing the booster. You simply cannot mask a mission kill with a landing video. You already know how this ends. 3 facts remain. BlueBird 7 failed to reach the planned orbit. Blue Origin formally stated a BE-3U engine underperformed. The FAA promptly opened a sweeping mishap investigation. The open loop is whether the next flight proves this was a fixable anomaly or confirms Blue Origin recovered the truck before learning how to deliver the cargo.